Welcome back to another reaction stream. Thank you very much to those of you who have tuned in, because I did set things up a little bit late. I just got home, set everything up, and was able to watch the highlights of the games today. So there's a lot to talk about this week, and I think one or two players really would have made a huge difference. So those of you with Mbumo, fair play. That 16-pointer was massive, and you can just tell the ones that didn't have him probably had a very poor week. You can still obviously do very well without him, but there were some really key performances and just some things that went completely wrong in my case. 38 points, a huge downgrade from the first week. I still have triple Arsenal left, and it was such a promising start. I had Mitoma and Estupinian delivering monster hauls, but after that, blanks from everybody else. Turner, of course, on the first day, and you got the likes of Chilwell getting a 1-pointer, Fernandes getting booked. You also have Marcus Rashford too, who was very underwhelming, missing a big chance against Tottenham Hotspur. Haaland blanking, which I don't mind too much, but even Ollie Watkins only providing an assist in a 4-0 victory for Aston Villa. And I have to say, those of you with Diaby, very unlucky. It easily could have been him delivering 16 points today, but it just wasn't meant to be. So there's a lot to talk about. My rank has gone down from 200k to around 700. There's still obviously a long way to go, but Game Week 2 so far has been a massive disappointment, even for Salah captainers, but at least on the bright side, you did gain 3 points over those who went for the boring Erling Haaland captaincy. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm going to go through your questions as always, and thank you very much for tuning in. So welcome, Roku. Good to see you. 43 points so far. 2 to go, sacking Gabriel. Hope Gabriel starts. I think he will. I've said this all along. Even when he got benched and there was a lot of clamour and, you know, people complaining about it, I still was very confident that in the next game he would come straight back into the side, and I'd be very surprised if that wasn't the case. Pedro to Wissa, thoughts? I like the look of Wissa. Obviously 2 returns in the first 2 game weeks, and even before that last season, you know, whenever he came on the pitch, he did a really good job. So I like the look of that. Of course, with Joao Pedro, he's still got another good fixture left, I think, in West Ham, despite their great performance today. And I'd probably hold Pedro for another week. You know, looking at some of the previous head-to-heads between Crystal Palace and Brentford, I don't really see a high-scoring game. Even though Brentford will be the favourites, they're the better team, I think it could be quite low scoring, and maybe this isn't the week to buy Mbumo and Wissa, even though I think they're great options long term. So maybe I'd hold off one more week before making that move. Pro TP says, horrible Game Week 2. Have 2 free transfers. Lucky for you, I've only got 1 because I used it on Mings to Rico Henry. Should I take Mbumo for Maddison or Bruno Rashford? I actually would say no. I would keep those players for now unless Maddison is ruled out. But just for those of you that aren't aware, Maddison was wearing a protective boot after the game yesterday against Man United. But he did tell the journalists around, I think, the cooldown zone that he should be fine. So obviously, you can never really take what players say that seriously because it's all down to the doctors and what they think. But I wouldn't be too concerned about Maddison's injury. And as for Fernandes and Rashford, as bad as options they are at the moment, and long-term they might be sells, I would keep them ahead of Nottingham Forest, especially Marcus Rashford, who has a really good record against them. So actually, I want to mention them very, very soon. I'll do a head-to-head comparison between those 2 Man United assets. But talking about Man United against Nottingham Forest last season, their overall record is 9 wins to Man United, 2 draws, and 1 loss there. And if you look at the results last season, Man United beat them 3-0, 2-0, and also 2-0 again. So they didn't concede a single goal, and they scored 2+ on every single occasion, and it was the same managers involved, Ten Hag and Steve Cooper. So despite how poor Man United have been so far this season, I will be very confident in them getting the victory. And yes, they might not score 3+, but I think they'll win probably 2-0. And I think it's worth keeping Rashford and Fernandes for 1 more week. After that, yes, fair enough. I think there are many better options at the moment, like Mbumo, but I don't think Game Week 3 is necessarily the week to make that move. Alex says, not a bad game week so far on 51 with triple Arsenal to go. I think that's a very solid week. I'm not so sure around your rank if that means a red or green arrow. I'm guessing it's a slight green, but that looks like a really good score. I wish I had that. Mbumo and Mitoma came in clutch. Yeah, I think those of, you with both of those players would be laughing this week. I only had 1 in Mitoma, who was the more template pick, so I'm a bit gutted not to have Mbumo and to have the likes of Rashford and Fernandes be so disappointing, but there you go. It's just impossible to cover all these assets, and ideally, I would have 7+ midfielders, but we just can't do that. Wei Sing says, Chilwell became the lowest scoring player in my team just because I captained him. The thing is, though, of West Ham, even though I thought Chelsea would win the game 2-1, historically, in the last 5 head-to-heads before today, I think both teams have scored on both occasions. So, yeah, that's the thing. History would have kind of given you an insight into West Ham scoring, but I didn't expect that. For Chelsea to concede 3 and, for Chelsea to concede a penalty and to miss their own penalty themselves. But there you go. That's what happens. Yeah, West Ham annihilated Chelsea. Yeah, I think Chelsea, they had some good moments in the game, but and I have to say, Chilwell still was impressive. I would like to keep him long term. I wouldn't be knee-jerking him out, which some people will do. But yeah, West Ham definitely were the deserved victors on this occasion. Pedro to Wissa makes sense on paper. I agree. It's just this week, I'm not so sure if I'd make that move. I think Pedro, if he starts, will outscore Wissa this week. But long term, I agree. I think Wissa's the better asset. John says, yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. E.G. Ryan says, 2 free transfers. This is my team, Onana, Gabriel. Let me just try get back to your team because unfortunately it's gone all the way down. Chilwell, Stupinian, Saka, Odegaard, Rashford, Bruno, Matoma, Haaland, Watkins. What would you do with 2 free transfers and who would you bring in Boomer in for? I appreciate it. I would bring him in for Bruno, but not this week. I would wait until Game Week 4 to make the move. If you really want to get Mbeumo in this week, then fair enough. I would probably still go ahead with it, but you've also got the likes of Matoma, who around Game Week 4 or 5, despite his great performance in Game Week 2, you could still look to sell him, to be fair. I like Watkins, despite his frustrations today. He's delivered in both games, and I think goals will come very soon. But yeah, I think your team is still pretty well set up in the long term, but I think the midfield is what you could mainly improve upon, and you've got 2 free transfers now. You don't want to waste or burn a transfer, so that's completely understandable. Mbeumo would have to come in for either Matoma or Bruno Fernandes for me. Roku says Foden and Diaz in for Bruno and Rashford. Not this week. I wouldn't do that. And I still think long-term I'd rather go for an Mbeumo over Foden. I know he's really impressive against Newcastle. And I was actually telling people, if, you back Foden to start, which is always going to be a big if, I actually did back him to do well against Newcastle. But that's always the question with him. Is he going to get a consistent run of starts? And that's going to be the main issue. At the moment, it looks like his best chance of getting minutes that, he's ever had at Man City. And I do like Diaz at the moment. A good return in Game Week 1, yet another one in Game Week 2, a fabulous goal after a bit of a shaky start against Bournemouth. But yeah, I like that Diaz transfer. Foden, not as much, but he's still a decent move. I wouldn't sell Bruno and Rashford ahead of Nottingham Forest at home, especially Rashford, who has a great record. And that's actually something else I want to talk about. So if we actually delve into the head-to-head, so Rashford against Nottingham Forest has a decent record, 2 goals and 3 assists in just 3 appearances. As for Bruno Fernandes, not as impressive, only 1 goal in 4 appearances, and that came in the League Cup last season. In the Premier League, he hasn't delivered a single return, so that is worth mentioning. But Marcus Rashford, I would back him to do very well against Nottingham Forest, especially if Forest play the way they have done in the first 2 game weeks of the season. Bad game week for me. Yeah, I think a lot of us are in the same boat, especially if you've got quite a template team, but I think those with Mbeumo and Matoma would have had a cracker of a game week. I'd give it another game. We've got Forest. I agree. I think that's the way to go. I'll be honest, I was kind of getting twitchy fingers, you could argue. I was really considering selling Fernandes to Mbeumo straight away, but I actually back Fernandes to outscore Mbeumo in Game Week 3. But of course, long term, Mbeumo looks like the far better option. Thank you, John. I appreciate it. Nice coordination in the chat, says Ashish. I'm not actually sure what you mean there, but maybe I'll realise in a few minutes. Kat says, Dan, going out to lunch in 5 minutes, but we'll catch the replay. I appreciate that, and thank you very much for being a member on Patreon and also as on YouTube. Thank you very much for that. Mudryk or Anthony, who will score first? I think Anthony, and I have to be honest, I think Mudryk has more potential, and I think he could still be unlocked, but he's just so raw. And as for Anthony, look, he can prove me wrong, but I don't understand the price tag, the hype, and I don't really see what he offers Man United. I know some United fans who watch them week in, week out would have supported him last season and, offered some good arguments about what he does offer, but I just don't see it. Yeah, Mbeumo's been really good, and he was in my final team or final draft before the deadline stream. It's a bit of a shame, but it was always going to be between him and Matoma for my 6.5 million slot. Maybe the answer was to have both. Thoughts on Chelsea assets for Game Week 3? I still like them, but I'm not sure about a triple up, and I've said this all along, even after the game against Liverpool. I think a double up is probably the sweet spot. 1 or 2 is fine, but I wouldn't be going for the triple up just yet. And I think Shaw and Jackson are still my favourite options. And as for a double up in Chelsea defensively, as demonstrated today, not really too keen. Man United as a fan just woeful, but hard to sell when Forest is coming up. I have to say, Forest have been pretty decent, you know. Most of us expected a comfortable win for Arsenal. And whilst Arsenal dominate the game, they still consider some big chances to them, and it was nervy in the end. And then you see Forest follow up with another, you know, decent performance and a victory this time against Sheffield United. So I think they could cause some problems for United, but I would back the Red Devils to win, probably by 2 goals. 2-0 is my prediction, and I think Rashford will score. Let's see how things go. Rocco says, thoughts on James Ward-Prowse? I'm not sure if I'll have him on my team, but looking at it now, you know, the way West Ham play, a lot of emphasis on set pieces and his quality with his delivery, you have to say, it looks like a match made in heaven. But it's only one game, of course. I'd still urge caution, but he could be a really good asset for his price. I have to say that. Really impressed by him today. Even got an open play assist for Antonio, so he could be a really good option. But it's only one game week, and I think Chelsea were a bit disappointing today. Ashley says, shall I sell Salah for Maddison and Oijo to Jackson or Alvarez? I actually prefer Alvarez at the moment, but Jackson has the fixtures over him, and also he's more nailed on than Alvarez. But I'd say Alvarez. And should I sell Salah for Maddison? Not at the moment, just because of the doubt, the yellow flag on Maddison. I think he'll be fine, but I'd wait a little bit on that. Of course, to spend 12.5 million on Salah, he hasn't delivered to those standards so far, 2 5-pointers, but yeah, I probably would keep Salah and not buy Maddison for now. Is Maddison going to be fit for Game Week 3? I believe so, but just wait and see first. What are your plans for Game Week 3? As things stand, it is to roll, and I discussed this in the deadline stream as well, but things can obviously change, and if I were to make a transfer, I could still yet bring in Mbumo, Maddison, you know, just bolster our midfield a little bit, but I don't want to sell Fernandes or Rashford ahead of Forest. So unlucky, Diaby without getting a return. I dropped Mbumo for Eze, but no matter what, I'll start him. I won't start him in my case. I have a starting 11 that looks decent. Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree with you about Diaby. He hit the post, I think, with a good Pickford save, and he had another big chance, which was straight out the goalkeeper. He should have done better, but Diaby was lively, and it's very surprising to see him and Watkins not really deliver that well. The OP, or the 0P, says, is it time to move one of my 2 Man United assets out? It's definitely, you know, worth mentioning. It's, you know, worth considering, but I would keep both of them for now. In terms of Onana, I definitely wouldn't sell him. I actually like him in the long term. He makes a lot of saves, and whenever United keep clean sheets, I think he'll do really well. As for United attackers, I think ahead of Forest, I would keep them, especially Rashford, who has a good record against Forest. Last season, he did very well against them in all competitions. So definitely keep Rashford. As for Fernandes, of course, it's worth considering selling him, but I would keep him for 1 more week. So my advice would be to keep, and then in Game Week 4, I'd look to sell Fernandes. I don't think Maddison's injury is serious. According to him, you know, he said it to the journalists. He's quite confident, but let's wait and see. Same 3 players as you, Dylan, 43 points, disappointing week for sure. I mean, that's still 5 points better off than me, and yeah, it was a disappointing week, but the Arsenal players could still turn it into an okay week. You know, if they all deliver pretty well, I could be looking at 50, maybe even 60, which is obviously pushing it, but that could mean a very small red arrow, which I wouldn't be, you know, too unhappy with. Chua coming off was a bit of a shock. Yeah, Chua was one of Chelsea's best players from what I saw, so it is a bit of a shame, but it's also, I think, just to manage his fitness. He is a bit of an injury-prone player after all, but he just continues to impress. Even today, conceding 3 goals, I like the look of Chilwell, and he's one of the best defenders at the moment. Remove Watkins for Jackson. Not for me. I know Jackson has the fixtures over him, but Watkins is facing Burnley away next, and even against Liverpool, I think Aston Villa could score a goal or 2, so I wouldn't necessarily do that. Turner can't carry that dead defence. Yeah, I did mention this in the deadline stream about Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest having a head-to-head which points towards goals being scored from both sides. So I wasn't that confident of a clean sheet, but I was very, very, you know, pessimistic about United's chances of getting a clean sheet, and I thought Forest could still keep one because of how bad Sheffield United are. In the end, didn't happen. Both got 2 points, so we discussed that a lot for nothing, really. But look, Turner's still a 4 million goalkeeper who starts. You can't complain too much. Lepuk says, Ivan Mbumo, should I go Salah for Matoma or Alvarez for Pedro, Brighton? I would rather do Alvarez in for Pedro. I wouldn't sell Salah for Matoma this week. Gabriel, Gavardiol, Udogi, Henry, Gusto, please rank them in order to buy. At the moment, it would be Rico Henry first, Gavardiol second, Gabriel third, Udogi fourth, and Gusto fifth. Obviously, it's kind of a close call between Henry and Gavardiol. If the Croatian can nail down a spot every single week, then of course he looks like the best, because Man City for me look like the best defense in the world. It's just so difficult to score a goal against them. Arsenal in the Community Shield final were very lucky to get that deflected goal. You look at the games against Burnley and Newcastle, and their XGC, their expected goals conceded, is so low, and it just feels like such a task to score a goal against them or even to create a single chance. Sam Munlee says Bruno plus Pedro, Mbuma plus Jackson, plan 1, Salah plus Pedro, Foden Jackson, plan 2. Which plan? I think Mbuma Jackson is slightly better. Yeah, simply because I think Mbuma is a better option than Foden. But look, Foden, if he can nail down a spot, is a good option, but I think Mbuma is more consistent. He's a talismanic figure. He's on penalties. He's been a bit lucky, by the way, Mbuma, I think, with both penalties he's gotten so far, but that's what penalty takers are there for. Which C defender would you recommend? At the moment, Gavardiol, but I also like a Kanji, who seems to be nailed on every single week, but that could definitely change. Thoughts on João Pedro benched? Look, he's a 5.5 million forward. He's still a decent asset, but it's worth mentioning that he's not a nailed-on option, as maybe we thought in pre-season. I wouldn't say he's a sell just yet, but going into Game Week 4, when the fixtures turn for Brighton, that's where I'd be more open to it, and going to Alvarez could definitely be on the cards. Who's the best replacement for Timber? It depends what price you're talking about, to be fair. Jackson or Alvarez? I'll probably go for Alvarez, despite Jackson being more nailed on and having better fixtures. I just think Alvarez, he's just such a good player for City, and he's gotten returns in both games so far, and Jackson still needs to prove himself in the league. Bowen and Watkins both no longer on penalties. Yeah, that could definitely be one to look at. I think Watkins is understandable. I think he scored 4 out of 9. As for Bowen, though, maybe a bit more surprising, but maybe a West Ham fan will rectify what I'm saying there. Did Sterling get bonus points? No, I don't think so. I wouldn't have thought so. I can have a quick look, but I wouldn't have thought that. So let's see. So the bonus points in the Chelsea game, I didn't have a look because, you know, none of my players got any. So yeah, bonus points went to Antonio. He got 3. Areola got 2, and Ward-Prowse got 1. So that's an 8-pointer there for a 4 million goalkeeper in Areola. Really good start for penalty save. He also made another really top save from open play. So really good stuff from Areola, and Ward-Prowse deserves it with his 2 assists. So yeah, those are the bonus points. Sterling was nowhere near, just to let you know. Actually, Gusto was the highest amongst Chelsea players, and he was 5th overall in the match. So Gusto, 4 million defender, you know, close to the bonus points despite conceding 3 times. Worth mentioning, but he's nowhere near as good of an asset as Reece James. Pickford out. I've said this all along. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I just don't trust Everton. And look, even against Arsenal, which looks so tough on paper, I would not be surprised if Everton won 1-0, as they tend to do at Goodison Park. But I just don't rate Pickford as an asset. I think there are many better goalkeepers, Fleckin, even Leno, Johnston. Not to mention, you've got the 5 million options like Onana. I definitely recommend them for sure. Yeah, Marco, you know, yeah, it doesn't look great at the moment. It's a bad week, but I think those 3 Arsenal players could turn things around. Stones to Gavardiol or Colwill? I like Colwill still, a 4.5 million defender, nailed on for Chelsea, great fixtures, but I'd probably risk it with Gavardiol. You know, he's not going to start every single game for me, but he'll start most. He'll probably be the most nailed on defender alongside Ruben Dias, and he's going to get you a lot of clean sheet points, so probably Gavardiol. Just felt like there's no big gap between City and Newcastle. Yeah, the game looked quite, I don't know about even, but it wasn't like a huge landslide. Normally, Man City batter Newcastle in years gone past. Even last season, there was a bit more of a comfortable victory at home. But yeah, Newcastle bridging the gap. They're a very competitive team, and they're such a nuisance to play against. But I still think Man City are head and shoulders above the rest of the league. I think the closest to them is probably Arsenal on paper, but I still have a few concerns about Arsenal, especially with Timber being injured, and it's City's league to lose again. Best 4.5 million goalkeeper, Flecken. Should I sell Nico Jackson? No, I wouldn't sell him ahead of those fixtures. It is frustrating, but he is involved. He still had a decent performance overall. He's having a lot of shots, and it's now just about converting them and having better chances created. Jackson or Wissa for Pedro? I mean, at the moment, you have to say Wissa looks better. I think Jackson will outscore Wissa in Game Week 3, but, you know, for the next 4, 5, 6 game weeks, I'd probably give the edge to Wissa at the moment. Can afford everyone. Who to replace Timber? So you have Cho already. I'd say Gavardiol. I'd probably go for him. You know, I'm still really, really apprehensive about City assets and Pep Roulette, but I probably would go for Gavardiol. Would you recommend Areola plus Turner? No. I don't trust West Ham and Nottingham Forest to keep clean sheets. I think that's just a disaster waiting to happen. I would like to have a goalkeeper like an Onana or Flecken who will get more clean sheets than both West Ham and Nottingham Forest for me. Look, it's not bad on paper. 2 4 million goalkeepers who will get a decent number of points for their price, but I would still rather go for a more reliable option. Alvarez or a City defender? Great question. I'd probably go for a City defender in Gavardiol. I am risking a little bit because they're not maybe the most nailed on, but I'm going to back Gavardiol to start most games. Welcome, Sonny. Arsenal prediction for tomorrow. I said 2-0 on Friday, and I think the only predictions I got right were Liverpool 3-1 and Nottingham Forest 2-1. The rest I was nowhere near because I said 2-1 Chelsea and stuff like that. I'm going to go for 2-0 Arsenal, but I think Palace could, you know, cause some real problems. Bowen was on penalty kicks. Yeah, but he is still playing sometimes as the striker for West Ham, so that's worth mentioning. But yeah, with West Ham, they've got Bowen, Ben Rama, and they've also got Lucas Paqueta who can take penalties. They've got some decent penalty takers. What are your changes for next week? At the moment, nothing. And that's the complete truth. Welcome, Atto. What's the best benched options now? Baldock and Mbama. Well, Baldock had an injury problem, and Sheffield United look... I mean, they look odds-on favourites to be relegated. I think best 4 million defender at the moment looks like Gusto for the time being, so long as Reece James is injured. Mbama doesn't look great, but you look at Osula and Semenyo, they look like the 2 best 4.5 million forwards. But I wouldn't be focusing too much on that unless you're really happy with your team, your starting 11 and your key assets, and you've got 2 free transfers and don't know what to do. That's the only reason why I would change my kind of cheaper options there. Turner or Areola, who will be keeper in Gameweek 3? That's a good question. Once again, I wouldn't recommend to any of you having, 2 4 million goalkeepers, but if you were to go that way, the goalkeeper I would start, I'd probably go for Turner, but that's because I think West Ham will concede more goals than Nottingham Forest potentially. You look at the way Brighton are playing, and they're playing some of the best football in the league. They're scoring multiple goals every game. And last season, I think Brighton beat them 4-0 and 2-0 against West Ham. So I'd probably go for Turner just about, but I think both will concede 2+. Is Sarr a good pick? I'm not so sure, to be honest. Foden for Fernandes, not this week. I'd definitely hold on to Fernandes and then look to sell in Gameweek 4. And long term, I'm still a bit bullish on Mbumo and a few other options over Foden. But I have to say, I'm warming up to Foden and Diaz. 2 options that I'm still maybe not completely convinced about, but I am changing my mind about them, that's for sure. Is Trippier a good pick? I mean, Newcastle will keep plenty of clean sheets, probably in the top 3 in the league. Not so sure, though, if I'd buy him just yet. I think Liverpool will score against Newcastle, and Liverpool have a great record against the Toon in recent Premier League games. Removing Salah, Chukwuemeka, and Pedro, only option to free up funds. Suggest players, please. I wouldn't sell Salah and Pedro necessarily this week, but if you were to buy players, I would look to get either Alvarez, Jackson, or Watkins up front. And if I had to lean towards one, it'd be Watkins still. And then Salah, I'd maybe move down to Mbumo, and Chukwuemeka as well to... I'm liking the look of Diaz and Foden, but it just really depends on who else you have. But yeah, I'd say maybe Diaz at the moment. I think that's where I'd go. Hold Salah or move to Foden? Hold Salah this week, in my opinion. Argentina and Chelsea supporter, knew Enzo would missed in penalty show against Dutch. Yeah, that's true. I don't like his penalty technique, the way he runs up. When he did it against Netherlands, I knew he'd miss. And yeah, it maybe was surprising to see him miss today. He wasn't even up against Fabianski, who's kind of the penalty specialist, but there you go. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Best replacement for Stones, I have Chilwell, Gabriel, Stupinian, Baldock. Maybe Gavardiol. I'd say either him or Rico Henry. I think one of those 2 look really good. Triple captain Haaland next week? No. I'd rather triple captain Haaland with a double game week or a home fixture. I think he could do it really well against Sheffield United, but last year in the FA Cup semi-final, 3-0 victory, Haaland didn't even do anything. Not a goal or assist. So I don't think I'd triple captain him. I think he'll score this time, maybe even 2, but I don't think it's worth triple captaining him. Let's see what else we have. Removing Salah, Chukwuemeka, and Pedro. We've covered this question already. Dixie says, hi Dylan, what do you think of Maddison, Foden, and Trippier in for Fernandes, Gabriel, and Rashford for a hit in Game Week 4? I like the look of it, to be fair. I probably wouldn't take a hit from Gabriel to Trippier. I'd probably just stick with 2 free transfers, if anything, and avoid the hit, especially involving a defender. It's worth mentioning Trippier's fixtures still aren't great around Game Week 4 or 5. Army NE says, at what point would you sell Salah if you did own him? Would you sell over Martinelli? Need to upgrade Pedro? That's a good question. So looking at the fixtures, and we can look at them together here, looking at Fantasy Football Hub. So Liverpool actually are really low down in the fixture difficulty rating. They're second bottom. You know, you're looking at Newcastle way up next, then it's Aston Villa at home, still not easy. Wolves away. West Ham at home, I think, could be fairly decent for Salah, but yeah, it's not looking great. Tottenham away, I think Salah could also do well. Brighton away, not as sure. So yeah, look, maybe now is the time, to be fair. It's just, would I sell Salah to Foden necessarily this week? I'm not so sure. I can understand why. Foden just did well. He's facing Sheffield United away next, and City are still, you know, pretty high up in terms of fixtures. Yeah, I'd probably say now then. I probably would say now, but I still think Salah will tick along nicely, get returns, but he just doesn't justify that 12-point family and price tag just yet. So, yeah, I probably would say now then. I'm not so sure if I'd go to Foden necessarily, but it's not a bad shout, that's for sure. I'm warming up to Foden, but I still always have in the back of my mind, when is he going to be benched? Salah for Diaz, it's not a bad move, you know. It might feel a bit sideways, but you do save a lot of money, and that could lead to another upgrade elsewhere. I think Diaz at the moment looks like a better option, that's for sure. Toronto says, hi Dylan, thoughts on the Game Week 2 results so far? I'd say a bit surprising. So Brentford-Fulham, I didn't expect it to be 3-0. I would have given Brentford the edge, but I was actually backing a draw. Liverpool 3-1, I did predict that result, and also Forest, but Brighton to battle Wolves, no, I thought it'd be a narrow win for Brighton, maybe even a draw. Spurs Man United, I thought Spurs could get something, but not a 2-0 win. United once again, decent first half, but really toothless in the second, and very poor start to the season. Man City, I mean, I backed them to win pretty much every single game, but it was maybe a bit tighter than I expected. Aston Villa absolutely battered Everton, and West Ham got the win. So I'd say there were 3 or 4 shocks in there. Real shocks where I just got the result completely wrong. But yeah, this Premier League season could be quite interesting, although the winner looks quite, you know, obvious, it seems. Is timber price going down? We'll have a look now according to fplstatistics.co.uk. So we'll load it up here. So, in terms of price rises, March, Matoma, and Isak are quite close. It might not be today, but in the coming week, you'd expect those 3, Akanji, Diaz, and a few others to also go up in price. You look at Walker, you know, quite close to a price rise. I still wouldn't recommend him. In terms of price drops, Mudryk, Mitrovic, who's already gone to Saudi Arabia. You've got, I mean, no one really of interest here. I have a look at Timber, since you asked specifically about him. Yeah, he's actually really close. I missed him there. I think he was on the 3rd page. Yeah, Timber's quite close, even Havertz as well. So yeah, Timber's quite close. Maybe not today, but I'd say in the coming days, it's very, very likely that he will go down in price. If we now look at Draft Hound, so this was my team in Game Week 2. I will use the assistant manager tool to make some recommendations. Onana comes in for Turner. Haaland's the captain. I still think he's the best option by far in Game Week 3, so I'm going to be bullish on him. A few other considerations include Saka, Marcus Rashford, even Fernandes and Martinelli are decent, but I think Haaland stands out once again. And yeah, I think my bench speaks for itself as well. But that looks like a solid 11. I definitely would expect an improvement there and maybe a green arrow. But it's very, very difficult to hold on to United assets when they look so poor in the first 2 game weeks. Let's see what else we have. Thinking of rolling transfer and changing Rashford to probably Maddison and Watkins to Jackson or someone else in Game Week 4. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. I would hold on to Rashford this week and maybe look to sell him on to Maddison or Mbumo in Game Week 4. I'm still looking at those 2 players really, really keenly. Watkins to Jackson also looks decent, but I'd probably... It might be dependent on Jackson's performance in Game Week 3. If it's another blank, and Chelsea look a bit toothless up front, then I would be a bit concerned about Jackson. And instead, I'd be more open to Alvarez. Bruno to Foden or Diaz? It's always a tricky one with Foden because whenever I recommend him, he comes back to bite me. I'm actually quite jinxed whenever I buy him. He never does well for me in FPL, but better fixtures than Liverpool. It's such a difficult one. I actually think Diaz has been more impressive in the first 2 game weeks, but those fixtures don't fill me with confidence. I'd probably say Foden just about, but it's just always such a tricky one with him because of minutes. That's simply the big reason, the big caveat and kryptonite with the England international. And actually, one thing I want to show you as well is the poll. So I put a poll out yesterday, straight after the United game, and it was about Rashford and also Bruno Fernandes. And I put a poll out saying, what are you going to do with these 2 assets? And 38% of you have said you're going to hold Rashford and sell Fernandes. 28% of you have said you're going to sell both. That might be a bit reactionary, to be fair. 22% have said to keep both, which is where I'm leaning towards at the moment. And 12% are holding Fernandes and selling Rashford. I have to say, in the first 2 game weeks, I think Fernandes has been slightly better. He's created a few good chances, even one for Rashford, which he should have scored. But I have to say, I would back Rashford to outscore Fernandes against Nottingham Forest based on the fixture, how well they've done last season, and also the way Forest play. Let's actually have a look at those 2 players. So this is also a really good resource I use in terms of comparing stats, and it's powered by Fantasy Football Hub as well. So obviously both of them have played 2 games, no goal contributions so far, both of them with 7 shots, Rashford with 1 more on target, 7 shots inside the box compared to Bruno Fernandes' 3, and also an expected goals figure of over 2. Expected assists though, a massive difference there in Bruno Fernandes' favour. 2 big chances for Rashford, and 1 for Fernandes. 2 big chances created for Fernandes there, and 7 key passes. Really impressive stuff. He should have had a return, at least 1 assist, and it could be another case there of Fernandes creating the most chances of any player this season, and yet not having the assists and the numbers to back that up. I still think it'll be a good option this season, but it's just not looking as good as he did maybe 2 or 3 years ago, unfortunately. But let me know, which player do you think will score more points in Game Week 3? I will back Rashford despite the stats probably slightly favouring Bruno Fernandes. Would you sell Shaw? Not this week. Probably in Game Week 4, but not in Game Week 3. Army Ennie says Salah to Diaz and Pedro to Alvarez Jackson. Looks decent, even to Foden. Diaz or Foden look fine, but if you don't have Mbeumo, despite me not backing him too much in Game Week 3, I think Mbeumo's the long-term pick. I would go for him instead of Diaz. And as for Alvarez or Jackson, I am favouring Alvarez so far based on what we've seen in the first 2 game weeks. But of course, things can change very quickly. Jackson has the fixtures, and I think he will do well. But Alvarez is looking really solid. Who will be to start in Game Week 3? I'm not sure what your question is there. Is 3 players from Chelsea essential? No. I think 1 or 2 is what I'd recommend at the moment, and if they play really well against Luton Town, that's where I'd be more open to getting 3 in Game Week 4, but I'd probably stick with 2. I think that's the max I'd go for at the moment. Definitely not essential. Estupinian or Gabriel to bench? Probably Gabriel, because Estupinian has so much assist threat, and you saw what he did against Wolves. It's just impossible to bench him at the moment. Maybe when he's facing a Newcastle, or the fixtures get tougher very soon, but nah. Dylan, Fulham conceded 3.9 XG against Brentford and 2.7 XG against Everton. True, but I would expect them to be tighter defensively against Arsenal. I think they'll sit back and I think they will work a lot on their defensive organisation, because if they play like they did in the first 2 game weeks, Arsenal will annihilate them. So it's a good suggestion what you say there. I think Saka could be a great contender for the captaincy. He is currently my vice. Saka against Fulham could be a punter captain, definitely, but I just would back Haaland to outscore him. But to be honest, it is worth going against the robot, as we saw this week. Some people going for Salah, 3-point gain. Even Ollie Watkins, 3-point gain, or I think it might have been 2 in the end. But yeah, I think that's a decent shout. Replacement for Salah, I don't know which midfielders you have, to be honest, so it's difficult for me to answer. But apart from Saka, you're mainly looking at Martinelli, Mbeumo. I would say Foden and Diaz look very solid as well, and Maddison. I still like Maddison despite an underwhelming performance against Man United. Pedro and Stones to Jackson and Gusto. I like the look of that, to be fair. If that's your way of funding Jackson, then fair enough. It's not too bad, but if you can, I would go to Rico, Henry and Alvarez. I think that's slightly better. Sterling in. Not for me. I think it's not a bad shout, but I'd rather go for Jackson. Fernandes on pens, yep, exactly. And I would back Man United to win by 2 goals against Forest. So I think Fernandes is a better asset until Rashford gets moved back to the left wing. That's a really good point. I think Rashford is nowhere near as effective when playing as a striker. And I think that the return of Højlund, from injury will be massive for Man United as well. Any chance of Ake starting in Gameweek 3? Of course, but with Man City defenders, even Gvardiol, Stones, Diaz, whoever it may be, you just won't get 100% starts. That's always going to be the issue. But they're going to keep the most clean sheets of any team. Best replacement for McAllister. I think Mbeumo if you can afford him, because apart from that, at 6 million and below, not really feeling most of the assets. I think I mentioned one player in my deadline stream, but the name does escape me. Thoughts about 3 Brentford assets? Yeah, they look really good at the moment, but I think 2 is the sweet spot as well. I'm not trying to, be contrarian, but I think 2 is probably my ideal one. So I'd say Rico Henry and Mbeumo is my favourite. But to be honest, Wissa and Mbeumo double up looks fantastic too. I've got to be really honest. I think I can't make myself starting short instead of Martinelli, Diaby, Stupinian, Watkins, Gvardiol. That's fair enough. I mean, I completely agree with you. I wouldn't necessarily start short over those players, but Shaw against Nottingham Forest, I'd probably back the clean sheet there. Like I said, with Sterling, good performance, but I still wouldn't recommend him in FPL. I think around 7 million, you just rather go for Mbeumo, Maddison, Diaz, Foden. I think they're all better options for me. Would you play Udogie or Saliba? Saliba. I know Udogie's playing Bournemouth, but I think Bournemouth will score. Sterling in, he was looking good. Already answered that question. Try not to spam, please. I'm considering Watkins to Wissa. Good shout, but I wouldn't do it this week. Maybe in Gameweek 4. But I think Watkins will outscore Wissa this week. News on Maddison. He is a doubt for the next game, but he did tell journalists that he is fine. He's not too worried about his injury. So obviously you can only take what players say with a pinch of salt, because it's all down to the doctors and things can develop very quickly. But I wouldn't be too worried. Fun fact, Diaby not playing 90 every game. True, but I think he's very explosive and I think he's Aston Villa's most exciting player. Best goalkeeper in the next game week? Great question. Just to recap for everyone as well, we'll have a quick look at the fixtures. That is a really good question. I think the best goalkeeper is probably Onana. I'd still back him. Maybe on paper, Man City have the best chance of a clean sheet, but I just see Edison getting 7 points max, and realistically, he'll probably get 6. I think Onana could be on for 8 or 9. I know Forest are decent. Awani, really good striker, and they've got some really good midfielders and attackers, but I think United will keep a clean sheet. I'll say Onana. I'd say Onana first. Probably I'd go for Sanchez second from Chelsea. Maybe either Ramsdale, Raya, whoever starts for Arsenal in third. And yeah, I think that's the way I would go. But yeah, that's my top 3. So that's probably what I'll stick with. I think that's the best 3 goalkeepers this week in terms of clean sheet probabilities anyway. I can't transfer Bruno even with the bad fixtures. Fair enough, but I think from Gameweek 4 onwards, I'd be very open to selling him because he can still do well in those tough fixtures, but it's just at the moment not worth it. You've got players who are 1 or 2 million cheaper and they're outscoring him quite comfortably. Is Stones injured? Yes, he is. He picked up an injury after the Super Cup final. So he had an injury already for Gameweek 1. He was already back. He was on the bench against Sevilla. And then I think the day after they trained, just before flying out, and he picked up a hamstring injury in training. So he should be out for a few weeks. Yeah, that's true. Diaz and Gvardiol should be nailed. But when Stones comes back, you could expect some rotation. That's the problem. Yeah, I think Diaz is the most nailed, followed by Gvardiol. I think that's the way it goes. And also Kanji, probably in the top 3. João Pedro to Wissa. No, I completely agree. I think that is an upgrade. But if João Pedro starts in Gameweek 3, which is an if, I think he'll outscore Wissa. Because I think Brentford Crystal Palace could be lower scoring than we think, actually. That's my prediction. If I'm not mistaken, their last meeting was a 1-1 draw. So yeah, just for those of you who aren't aware, it was a bad week for me. I have gone down from 200k to 700k after a really good start from my Brighton players, which saw me go up to 100k. And I'm really relying on Arsenal for my, my happiness for the week and also for my FPL points. So let's hope for the best there. Welcome, Islam. Good to see you. Hey, Dylan, was a decent week for me. 44 plus Saka, Martinelli left. Yeah, I think that's pretty decent. but needs still to do many changes. I have Nunez and Stones, Bruno and Rashford. I would keep Bruno and Rashford. I don't think they're priority sells. While Nunez could start against Newcastle, I think the way Jota presses and what he offers to the team, his goal threat, his form in pre-season, I think he could maintain his spot. So I think Nunez and Stones are the sells. Stones has a hamstring injury, so you wouldn't expect him to be back anytime soon. So yeah, Stones and Nunez to sell. I don't know how much money you have in the bank, but what I would look to do potentially is Nunez to either Alvarez or Jackson, and I would look to do Stones to Chilwell if you don't have him. Otherwise, I'd look towards Henry or Gavadio. Let me know if you got that. Is Jackson a keep? Definitely. Even though I have a few doubts about him because he hasn't scored a Premier League goal yet, with those fixtures, I wouldn't sell. Wei Seng says, who would you bench for sure from the names I mentioned above? Probably no one, to be honest, Wei Seng. Maybe Diaby, maybe, but he's got a higher ceiling than Shaw. Who should I play next week, Bowen or Wissa? Great question. I would play Wissa. So Bailey, not someone to eye on? Oh, definitely, but I think he has a great record against Everton. It's kind of like his favourite team. I'm not saying he's a bad option, but from Aston Villa, Watkins and Diaby are still my favourites. Should I make any changes to Pickford, Turner? Yeah, Pickford. I would sell him to Onana if you can, if not fleck him. Is Diaz nailed? It looks like it at the moment, but I think there will be rotation, especially when the Europa League and Carabao Cup come into play. Krishna says, hey Dylan, what do you think of Richarlison and Watkins for Jackson and Foden? Good moves. I think the Richarlison to Foden move looks really good. If you have to downgrade Watkins in order to achieve it, I'd probably go with it, to be fair. I think Richarlison could still, do well, get some goals, playing out of position, but I just don't trust him to score. And even if he does score against Bournemouth, I think there are better forwards in the game, like Jackson, Alvarez, Wissa. I think they're all far better options than Richarlison. So overall, it's worth it. My only concern is selling Watkins. Turner to Areola to burn a transfer. Yeah, if you kind of don't know what to do, I'd probably still keep Turner, to be fair. And I actually think Turner, I want to say outscores Areola, but he's got a better chance of conceding less, I'd say, at the moment. For 2 free transfers, Krishna, yeah. Overall, I'd lean towards yes, but like I said, I'm a bit unsure about Watkins being sold. I want to have either Gavadio or Diaz. It's tough to say because we've only had 2 games, but I think Ruben Diaz is probably better in the air, got better goal threat, oddly enough. I don't see either scoring many goals. I think Gavadio will be better for bonus points, and he's also cheaper. So in terms of being nailed, I would give the edge to Diaz as well, but overall, I'd probably go for Gavadio because he's cheaper. He's kind of the shiny new toy. He's highly rated. Man City have spent 90 million on him, or 90 million euros, 80 million, or 77 million pounds. I'd probably go for Gavadio as an FPL asset. Best defender, for me, it's between Chilwell. Actually, at the moment, it's Estupinian. The problem is the fixtures do turn in Game Week 4. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, United also are capable of getting these maybe jammy clean sheets in a way, and I would back them to keep the most clean sheets in home matches. So I wouldn't sell him ahead of Nottingham Forest at home. That's just my take, and I would start him if you can. Bailey or Diaby? Diaby for sure. Despite what happened today, Diaby all day long. And who's more likely to have an attack in return? Diaby for me. Keep in mind, I'm picking one of those 2 to replace McAllister. We'll go now to the stats comparison that I use. So I'm going to put the names here of Diaby and Bailey. So we'll have a look here. I think the stats have been updated. Yeah, they have been. So, all right. So here we go. Leon Bailey versus Diaby. 2 games for both so far. Sometimes it does take a little bit of a while to load, but I do like this website. And hopefully this will help you with your decision. But look, no matter what the stats say, I am going to back Diaby from what I've seen. I also think he's the better player. Yeah, I'm going to have to refresh the page, unfortunately. It's a bit of a shame, but hold on for a second here. It is worth it, trust me. Yeah, the website is dead, it looks like. Bit of a shame. But as you can see with Diaby, one big chance created, 4 key passes, an XG of 0.78 for a 6.5 million midfielder, 0.51 expected assist, 6 shots, 4 on target, 5 shots in the box, and he scored against the top team in Newcastle United in Game Week 1 on his Premier League debut, and he was very highly rated. At one point, he was linked to Arsenal in the summer even. They were linked to him. So let's try this again. So Diaby and Bailey. So yeah, look, decent stats for Bailey. He's also cheaper. One big chance for both, one big chance created, one key pass. I mean, these are some decent stats for Bailey, but Diaby still leads in most metrics. Obviously, the most important one is FPL points and goal contributions. Bailey does lead because of the assist, but more shots for Diaby, more on target, more shots in the box, more XG, more everything pretty much, like expected assists and key passes. I would definitely back Diaby. Of course, him not getting 90 minutes is a bit of a concern, and I do prefer Mbumo long term, but Diaby is still one of my favourite 6-point family midfielders. It's just a bit of a shame that the fixtures do turn a little bit for Aston Villa soon. Frosty says, should I sell Salah and Archer and buy Alvarez and Foden for free? I'd probably say yes. I like Salah a lot. I still think he's a great option, but for 12.5 million, he's simply not offering that value, and I think Alvarez and Foden against Sheffield United could do really well. Just bear in mind, you are also going to be involved in Pep Roulette, and there will be some frustrating times. I would not be surprised if one of those were benched against Sheffield United, so be a bit cautious about that. I maybe wouldn't go all in on Man City. I think one is fine. I've got Onana in goal. No, don't replace him. I think you'll... Look, it's obviously not a banked-in clean sheet, and Nottingham Forest are looking good, but I think United will keep a clean sheet. Thoughts about March? Yeah, first 2 game weeks, really impressive stuff, even better than Mitoma. But yeah, I wouldn't buy him now. If you're looking for a 6-point family midfielder, Mbumo is the best long-term asset. I like Diaby as well. And you've got a few other options there. Maddison for 7.5 million. So I like March, but buying him now, yeah, he could do well against West Ham. But against Newcastle and in Game Week 5, I'm not that sure. Akanji looks average this season. I'd say that's a bit harsh. I don't think Akanji ever looks like a top defender, or he's maybe not the most flashy defender about, but he does his job. He's a good one-on-one defender. He's versatile. He can play all, left back, centre back, right back, and Man City have made a great acquisition, signing him for around 15-20 million. No. Yeah, so far, obviously, it's difficult to say. Caicedo came on for a few minutes, conceded a penalty, had a disaster debut. I still think Caicedo's a much better player than Basuma. I have to say, Basuma's been really impressive so far. All bias aside, I think Tottenham, are really impressive to watch, and Basuma is orchestrating things in the midfield, but Caicedo's a better player. As simple as that. Welcome, Arstravidan. Good to see you. Pedro and Wissa, who will start in Game Week 3? Wissa will start most games with Tony out, and Wissa long-term is a better asset than Joao Pedro, but my point is, if Joao Pedro starts in Game Week 3, I think he outscores Wissa because of the nature of the fixture. I think Brighton will score more goals against West Ham United than Brentford will score against Crystal Palace. That's just my prediction. I could be wrong. What's wrong with Baldock? I think he's got a calf injury, if I'm not mistaken. He was really a bit of a doubt after Game Week 1. I talked about this in the deadline stream where I saw some people with sources that spoke to Baldock, and they said that Baldock was a concern. I wasn't that sure about the source, and that's why I said take with a pinch of salt. And I also made a transfer in my defense just in case I needed my bench player Enrico Henry to come on. Al Naja says, I'm having a hard time understanding why some people played wildcard. No, I agree. It's just, for me, it's reactionary. And it's also kind of this thing of, I want to chase last week's points and also, rectify the mistakes I made in Game Week 1. For me, you need to give your Game Week 1 selections time to breathe. Even Fernandes and Rashford looks like a mistake. It's just really not worth it to knee-jerk them out straight away. This is coming from someone who made a transfer in Game Week 2, but I only did it because Mings has an ACL. He's going to be out for multiple months, and I like the look of Rico Henry from last season and also in Game Week 1. But yeah, if it wasn't for injuries, I would have rolled the transfer and I would be in a better position in Game Week 3. But yeah, I agree with you. I think a wildcard in Game Week 2 is just far too reactionary. Baldock to Henry, great move. I would do it. After nearly 2 weeks, who do you think gets top 4 this season? Really early on, in my opinion, to answer these sorts of questions, but that's the beauty of it. I think Man City, Arsenal, that will be the top 2 for me, but I'm hoping for an Arsenal win, of course. At least someone different from City. But yeah, Man City probably to win the league. Unfortunately, Arsenal second. Man United don't look great, but let's not forget, Man United were awful in the first 2 game weeks last season, and then they did really well afterwards. So I still back them for top 4, but maybe just about. Newcastle still look really impressive so far. You know what? I'm going to go for Man City, Arsenal. I'm going to go for Newcastle third. And in 4th position, it's between Man United. I mean, Brighton looking really good at the moment, but still expecting a bit of a drop-off. It's so difficult to predict, honestly. I don't think Chelsea get top 4. I think they could finish 5th or 6th, but I don't see them finishing top 4. Liverpool, I still think they need a midfielder, a defender. Then I think they will cement a top 4 place, but they look really shaky against Bournemouth. And against Chelsea, they really should have done better. So, based on the first 2 game weeks, yeah, that will be my top 4, I think. I know Man United looked awful so far, but I'd still back them to make another big signing and also creep into the top 4. That's my top 4 then. It's pretty much the same as last season, just maybe a different order. Martinelli or Mbeumo? Mbeumo at the moment, but I like Martinelli a lot still. He'll probably do well tomorrow, but Mbeumo's cheaper on penalties. That's the way to go. For me, I've said this all along, Flecken, maybe his ceiling won't be as high as Leno, but I think Brentford are still looking pretty decent. Would you sell Eze and or Mitoma after Game Week 3? I'm looking to potentially sell Mitoma, but my priority is to sell Fernandes. In your case, I'd rather sell Eze over Mitoma at the moment. And yeah, Mbeumo's a great transfer. Is Game Week 3 worth the -4? Look, it's an interesting question because a -4 is always going to divide opinion, and ideally you wouldn't take hits. I always say if you can afford it, don't take a hit because you might have a decent option on your bench, or the player you're looking to sell could still do really well and you can't be too knee-jerky. But I think a -4 can be worth it in any game week, even Game Week 2. The problem is, you know, the more game weeks that pass, the more information you have and the more informed decisions you make. But it really just depends what the transfer is. So let me know what it is. But I definitely wouldn't take hits for goalkeepers. That's just a no-no for me. Dean was looking great. His cross delivery. Did have had 2 assists today. Yeah, and also really good improvisation for the throw-in that he took that caught Everton off guard. Yeah, he looked decent. But Luca Dean, a bit of an FPL troll. And from Aston Villa, I think Konsa will be just fine. Pau Torres and also Matty Cash. The thing is, though, look, it's not a bad shout, you know, that you mentioned there. But I don't know. Luca Dean for me, he's always got like a red card in, an own goal, an injury. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit too biased there, but still, I'm a bit apprehensive about him. Onana for me all day long. Man City will keep more clean sheets, and Edison should start pretty much every single game. But the thing that separates the two is saves, and I think Onana will outscore him this season, and he's $500,000 cheaper. Welcome, Patrick. What do you think about Pedro and Gabriel out for Jackson and Colwill? I like it. I do think Gabriel to Colwill is a downgrade, but you are making that move to get the funds for Pedro to Jackson, which I understand. And you're also targeting the fixtures for Chelsea. But if you can, I would go to Rico Henry instead of Colwill. Mehdi says, do you see yourself transferring out Bruno and Rashford? Very unlikely. If I were to transfer one out, it'd be Bruno. But I think I'll transfer Bruno out in Game Week 4, not now. I think Burnley could cause some trouble to Villa. Feels like they're not as bad as people thought. Yeah, they face City, the best team in the world, in the first game week. So, yeah, I think Villa will concede. You know, it might be a narrow win or something, but I think Villa will struggle, as you say. Yeah, that's a good suggestion there. How on earth did Aston Villa score goals without Watkins getting any? And also Diaby. If you saw Diaby's performance, you'd just be tearing your hair out about how he didn't score. No, I wouldn't say so. You know, that's 2 assists in 2 games. Not ideal, but it's still consistency. And I think Watkins will probably score against Burnley. I know I'm being very optimistic, and I always say this every week, and it never turns out right, really. But I think Watkins will score against Burnley. Thank you, Islam. I do have Henry, already got him after Game Week 1. My reasoning here is that I already have a Stupinian, Powell, and Henry, which should be solid for the next 2-3 game weeks, but DN is expensive to keep. DN, let me just remind myself who that is. Apologies for the ignorance. DN is Darwin Nunez, I'm guessing. Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah, I'd maybe say Gavardiol then. I'd maybe take a punt on a City defender, which didn't turn out, you know, maybe right for you in the first game week, but there you go. Is Isak being overlooked? Look, I like Isak, and You might say, well, why did you say he's a skip in Game Week 2 for the transfer tips video? Because he faced Man City. It's as simple as that. Against Liverpool, I think he could do well. The nature of the fixture, I think Newcastle will score. But I still don't see him having a high ceiling. Yeah, that's a good shout. I think Newcastle have some good fixtures from an attacking point of view. And yeah, I backed them to finish in the top 4 based on the start of the season. But it's all a matter of a timing for me. At the moment, I prefer Alvarez, Wissa, Jackson. But of course, when the fixtures turn for good around Game Week 4 or 5, that's where I'd be really looking to get Isak in. My main issue with Isak is rotation, and also when Wilson comes into the starting 11, Isak could be shifted to the left winger position and he won't be on penalties. Fernandes to Mbumo, not this week. I would look to do that in Game Week 4. I think Fernandes will outscore Mbumo in Game Week 3. That's my early prediction. Salah's pen is embarrassing. Yeah, Salah's recent penalties have been very weird because he missed against Bournemouth last season, also against Arsenal, and against Bournemouth this season. Maybe he should be off penalties. When McAllister comes back from suspension, maybe he should be taking them. Any need to offload Brian assets? Not in Game Week 3, but I think around Game Week 4 or 5, that's where I'd look to sell. 2 clean sheets in a row for Edison. Yeah, look, like I said this before. I back him to get the Golden Glove potentially, but do I see him being the highest scoring goalkeeper? No. Does he need to be? No. To be fair, he doesn't. But when you can get a Nana or Flecken, who are cheaper, they'll probably outscore him because of saves and bonus points. I just rather go there. And at one point, you might want 2 or 3 City players, and Edison could kind of lock you out of that. Welcome, Chelsea Blues. Best defender next week. Good question. I think Chilwell against Luton Town. That is my kind of first pick that comes out of the top of my head. If I had to build like a defensive line, it probably would be Gvardiol, Luke Shaw, and Chilwell. And if you had to add a 4th defender, maybe a Saliba. I think those are the 4 teams most likely to keep a clean sheet. And I think Chilwell has so much attacking potential. Really impressed by him again today. Ralph says, I have 2 free transfers. Do you believe Maddison's price will rise in the next days? I can have a look for you now using fplstatistics.co.uk. So if we have a look at Maddison, I think the yellow flag does put people off. So at the moment, it's looking like he is on course to going down. Still a long way to go, of course. I think he's just going to stay at his price because after blanking against United and the yellow flag, until that's cleared up, I don't see that many people going for him to rise in price. So based on this, I'd say he won't go up in price, but he won't go down either. Salah to Maddison, never thought I'd say that, but fixtures. Yeah, I know. I wouldn't do that just yet. I know Salah could be on course for a price drop, but wait for clarification on Maddison just in case. Best Man City defender, it's difficult to say at the moment. Akanji seems to start every game, but I'd probably give the edge to Gvardiol. Pick one, Diaby, Saka, and Boomer. Saka definitely, especially next week. I think he could do really well against Fulham, as some people pointed out in the chat too. By the way, let's go back to my team now. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I know it might not be, the busiest stream or anything, but I appreciate those who are tuning in and those posing the questions. And we do have, I don't even speak English, almost 100 people watching. And we only have 43 likes. So let's try to get this stream to over 100. I know some people watch, after the stream is done, they watch it retrospectively in the days to come. So be sure to tune in as well. Smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. And actually, we are very close to the 19,000 subscriber milestone. I think we're around 80 subscribers away. So if you haven't done it already, be sure to drop a subscription. And one other thing I want to do very quickly before we go back to your questions is give a huge shout out to all the channel members and patrons, which I want to do more often now in my videos and streams. So Abhishek, thank you very much for becoming a channel member. Also Ananda, Kat, who's also a patron as well. Bestie, the great Aditya, Nonthana, I think it is, or Nothama. I'm sorry if I butchered your name, and anyone else as well. Julio Peña, Birkan, Sergi, That Air, Eric, Rupstars, Diego, OK, Lavanier, George, Alex, Farhad, Mats, Gabriel, Aman, and John, who has almost been a member for 2 years, which is absolutely insane. So thank you to everyone, and also to the patrons, which does include Ben Lockett, the newest patron, Lovro Zuvic, and Keith, who is also a channel member as well. Last year, at one point, we hit around 60 members and patrons. We're looking to get to similar numbers this season, and at one stage, maybe reach the 100 milestone as well. So thank you to everyone who's done so. You don't have to. It's just to support the channel even further and get access to perks such as all my team reveals through some images and also some constant communication on those platforms. So thank you very much to everyone who has supported the channel, all the subscribers, those who like the videos, who comment on the live streams and chats, the videos as well. All of that support goes a long way. And you've also got my socials like my Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, the Discord server, and also the FPL League. Be sure to check all the links in the description below and support the channel even further. I have Garnacho. Should I replace him with Enzo? No. I did mention after Game Week 1 I was impressed with Enzo, and he could become a really good FPL option once Caicedo gets into the 11, which should be in Game Week 3, but I wouldn't buy Enzo necessarily. Garnacho looks really poor. I don't think he's ready to start Premier League games yet. A lot of potential, but United definitely need to upgrade on that position at the moment. I'd rather go for someone else entirely. I think if you want a starting midfielder, you need to find money to then go to a 6-point family and choice like Mbeumo. Yep. Covered that. I've currently got a midfield five of Saka, Rashford, Bruno, Fernandes, Martinelli, and Mbeumo. I'd keep things as they are for now. In the future, I would look to maybe sell Bruno Fernandes to either Foden, Diaz, or Maddison, and I still prefer Maddison of the three. Wasing says sure replacement if I'm owning a Stupinian, Chilwell, Gavardiol, and Cash. Everyone is affordable once again. Good question. Probably Rico Henry. Not really backing a clean sheet against Palace necessarily, but I just like his attacking potential, and I think he's a decent, cheap option. Do you react and look at the FPL teams or viewers? If so, where can I show you? Well, you can put your team in the Discord server, send an image on Twitter and Instagram, and, you know, if it is highly requested, I might do some more frequent rating your teams videos, which I have done just a few weeks ago before the season began, but I would like to do it, you know, as the season goes on. So if you, like I said, check all the links in the description below. You can send an image on any of those platforms and we can go over your team. Not just me, but also other people in the community too. Thoughts on the price rises? It's annoying how they're done because loads of casuals do transfers early. I completely agree, to be fair, but it's kind of the beauty and also the frustration with, you know, the price changes. They're kind of dynamic. It makes the game a bit more interesting, but yeah, it does price you out of some moves, and you just kind of wish people were more patient, but there you go. Everyone's different. Kovacic still not impressive. I can't lie to you, I actually disagree. Watching Man City against Newcastle, I was actually really impressed with Kovacic, not as an FPL asset, but just the way he carries the ball. He's always effortless. The way he glides, his agility, his ball control is always a joy to watch. Also for Croatia, it just seems like you can't get the ball off him. Does he have that cutting edge that Gundogan has? Definitely not. And I still think Man City need a midfielder and a right winger. But I still think he's a decent signing for his price in this market. Between Johnson and Turner, who would you transfer? Johnson? Which Johnson are you on about? I'm guessing that's the Nottingham Forest one. If that's the case, then it would be him. You think Chelsea would have done better with Nkunku? Definitely. I think Nkunku would have been one of the best forwards in FPL if he didn't get injured. He was scoring and assisting every single game in pre-season. He was pretty much locked in for my team. Unfortunately, got injured. Yeah, and also, look, I might be proven wrong. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm not going to get everything right. But I just look at their team, and with the amount they've spent, I still see so many average players like Gallagher starting. That might not be the case, you know, once Lavia and Caicedo come into the team. I also look at some of the defenders, you know, getting minutes, and I just don't really see them as top quality. So, yeah, I think United will finish above them still. That's my prediction. I also think Newcastle will. I'd back Arsenal and Man City too. You know, Man City will probably win the league again. And look, it's so early on. Chelsea still, I think, had a decent performance today offensively and also in Game Week 1 against Liverpool, but they just need finishers, and I also think they need a bit more quality, which, after all they've spent, you would expect them to have. What's your thoughts on McAllister's red? Yeah, I don't think it's a red card. You know, based on the rule, you could somewhat understand, you could say, but for me, it's never a red. It's never a red card. Simple as. Some people use their wild card due to injuries. That's fair. You know, if you've got a lot of injuries, you know, like you say, Stones, Mings, that could push you towards a wild card, but even then, you know, unless you're down to 8 or 7 players, you know, I'd probably still look to hold on. Of course, it's easy for me to say, and everyone's situation is different, but some people genuinely wildcarded even without that many injuries. Mudryk to Matoma, I like Matoma a lot, and I think he'll do well against West Ham, but the fixtures afterwards aren't great, and I think there could be some blanks along the way for him. So I'd actually rather just go for Mbumo. You could just do Mudryk to Matoma this week, then sell him to Mbumo, but ultimately, I'd just be a bit concerned about Matoma in the long term. My -4 is to sell Salah, buy Diaby, and then buy Akanji for Baldock. Look, as a duo, you're upgrading basically, but a -4 to sell Salah, I just can't recommend that, personally. You think that Udogi's minutes could be at risk with Ben Davies in the same position? That was a concern I had before Game Week 1, and that's why I went for Mings in the end. I still have that concern, but I still think Udogi will get plenty of minutes and starts, but you make a really good point. I think once Ben Davies, maybe impresses in training, and once he's more acclimatized with the new manager, he could start robbing some minutes off him as well. And also you've got Emerson Royal and Pedro Porro on the other side. So yeah, Romero, I just wouldn't go there. Too many yellow cards. He's such a rash defender. And I wouldn't be surprised if he got 2 or 3 reds this season. So I probably wouldn't recommend Romero. Honestly, with Spurs defenders, I wouldn't go for them. I know they kept the clean sheet against United, but I think that's mainly down to how poor United were in front of goal. They still had some really good chances in the first half, and I think Spurs won't get that many clean sheets, in my opinion. Is Pedro to Jackson a good transfer? I think so. If Maddison is fine, him or Martinelli? I still think Martinelli's better, but Maddison's a good option. I'm looking to buy him as well. Reece James might go down in price tonight. Is Kyle Walker at 5 okay? I don't think Kyle Walker's that nailed on, to be honest. Yes, he might be the captain. He might start more games than last season, but I'm not so sure if I'd buy him. If I were to go for a Man City defender, it probably would be Gvardiol or Akanji right now. All right, Dylan, on into top 150k. Really good stuff, Freddie. Happy for you. I had a 500k red arrow, so it's good to see someone do well. Would you transfer Bruno and Ake out for Mbumo and Chilwell? It would be for a -4. No, simply because Ake could come back into the starting 11 next week facing Sheffield United, and Bruno faces Nottingham Forest. So as good as Chilwell and Mbumo are, and I like Mbumo a lot long term, I wouldn't do it for a -4. Game Week 3 roll, Game Week 4 shot Pedro, Gabriel to Rashford, Wissa, Maddison, 5 million defender for -4. I like that a lot. And 5 million defender, it could be Rico Henry at 4.6. It could be Gvardiol. I like the look of that. Really good transfers. Newcastle can destroy Liverpool easily. The thing is, last season Liverpool did the double over them, but I would back Newcastle this time round. Best defender, we have covered that, so I don't know what else to say. Happy with Watkins. I may keep him and not buy Jackson. Yeah, it is frustrating when Aston Villa score 4 and Watkins basically gets an assist from a penalty 1, I think it was in the end, but I still like Watkins. He's fairly consistent. Do you know why Chilwell was subbed out today? I think it's just to manage minutes and to make sure he doesn't get too much load and, to prevent injuries. I think that's why. But I like the look of Chilwell a lot still. I'm very happy with him. I think he's probably the best option in Game Week 3 for defenders. If you're considering Edison, you're better off getting a C defender. I agree. I completely agree. And also with Edison, not many saves. Man City are so good defensively, then Edison's not going to be called into action too often. Alvarez or Wissa in Game Week 4 and onwards. In Game Week 4 and onwards, I'd say Wissa. I think Alvarez outscores Wissa in Game Week 3, but from what you're saying, Wissa. Hey mate, finally catching up with you. Hope you're having a good one. Thank you, Jack. Likewise, it's good to see you again. Richarlison to Foden. Yeah, I think that's a good move. My concern is minutes, as always with Foden, but he's looking really good, especially in Game Week 2. Top performance against Newcastle. I have Martinelli. Thoughts on removing him for Diaz or Mbumo? I wouldn't do that personally. Who's the better option? Mbumo. How would you rate this Wolves? Yeah, I said this on Monday when they played Man United. Good performance. I was very surprised by it, but I thought it was more to do with Man United being so poor and lethargic. And I think that's what gave Wolves a bit more belief to win the game. But I said this before with Wolves. They might offer some decent value in defence and also a Jose Sarr, but I just don't trust their attackers. I would never go for their attackers and midfielders. Henry, Akanji, and Foden and Mbumo for Stones and Maddison. I'd say Henry and Mbumo. That's the way I'd go. I think Man City will keep more clean sheets than Brentford, but would you trust Akanji to start every game? Maybe not, but definitely Mbumo over Foden. The other one's a bit closer, but I would give the edge to Henry. Should I keep Son? Look, it's tricky because he's facing Bournemouth next, but I'd probably sell him because he's just not worth that price. He's not as consistent as you need him to be in order for him to really justify that price tag. So I probably would sell him. It could backfire, of course it can, but I would sell him. Akraf says, I've made 2 free transfers before the price rises, which is Rashford to Mbeumo and Nunez to Watkins. What are your thoughts? I like it. Of course, Watkins' fixtures aren't the greatest, but he is still a consistent striker. Rashford to Mbeumo, I'm not too sure about that, to be honest, mate. I think long-term is good. I think Mbeumo's the better option, but in Game Week 3, I think Rashford outscores Mbeumo. Hello, Dylan. Hope you're doing great. Do you think Zaniolo could be a good choice? Potentially, but I'm still mainly looking at Diaby from Aston Villa. Which players do you think are the best to create a team? That's a very kind of vague question. I mean, I would like to say basically the team you see in front of you, but that's not true, simply put. If I were to make changes to my team, if I were to wildcard now, and I will be making a wildcard video for those of you maybe interested, it'd be very similar to this, but I think some changes I would make would include Bruno Fernandes out to Mbeumo, even though I think United will probably do better than the Brentford assist this week. I also would be looking at Maddison or Foden or Diaz, I think, for that 5th midfielder slot, and maybe Alvarez or Jackson in for Watkins. But it wouldn't be too many changes from this, I think. I'd be very happy with this. Maybe Gusto in for Baldock, Semenyo in for Asula. Really small changes, really, but I like the look of this team. There'd be 3 or 4 key changes, I would say. I think you may do a rate your team video every 5-10 game weeks. That's a good shout. That was something I was considering last season too. Mbeumo in for Bruno, not this week, in Game Week 4 for me. Welcome. Good day. I got almost exactly the same team as you. Good idea to wildcard Game Week 4? No, I don't think it's worth wildcarding, to be honest. Hey Dylan, what are your transfer plans? To roll at the moment and to use 2 free transfers potentially in Game Week 4. It could be Maddison and Mbeumo in for Fernandes and Mitoma. 66 points or 139, still Saka to play, really good score. You should be into the 70-plus point mark there, or you could be. Between Jota and Diaz, pick one. I'd still go for Jota, but Diaz has certainly been more impressive so far this season. Foden and Alvarez, pick one. Alvarez, just because he's cheaper, seems a bit more nailed on for me. And yeah, I think amongst forwards, I think he's one of the standouts compared to Foden, where you've got such a competitive market in the midfield. Mbeumo and Alvarez in for Bruno and Watkins out. Not this week. Honestly, not this week. Alvarez or Diaby? Based on the fixtures, I'd say Alvarez. Is Udogie as attacking as Henry? No, I don't think so. You think Mudryk lacking confidence? Let's not forget, he doesn't have many senior appearances under his belt. He's a very raw talent. He has a lot of potential, but he's not Premier League standard at the moment, in my opinion. I wouldn't say he's rubbish, but I just don't think he's... I don't think he's quite ready yet to start for a top team. March and Mitoma. I like them, but I wouldn't necessarily buy them in now because in Game Week 4, facing Newcastle, the fixtures up until Game Week 8 or 9 are pretty horrible, and I don't see the ceiling being as high. Isak or Wissa? Great question. I'd actually go for Wissa based on minutes. Downgrade Gabriel or Odegaard to fund Pedro to Jackson? I would actually rather downgrade Odegaard. Of course, if tomorrow Gabriel's benched yet again, my tune could definitely change, but I'd rather downgrade Odegaard. All right, Al Naja. I probably won't check it now, but I will check it after the stream is done. And for anyone else as well, check all the links in the description below. If you want to send your teams in, be sure to do so. And if you want to see rating your teams videos, let me know. And that could be a thing I do every 5 to 10 game weeks, as Weiseng said. When do you think is the best time to wildcard? It's all team dependent. I can't say something definitive for everyone, but I think around Game Week 7 is when we can start to consider it, I think. Damn, Bruno and Rashford could have easily got 8 points each. They should have provided at least one return, but it wasn't meant to be. Welcome, Milner. I've got a bit of a debate here. Should I get Maddison in for Eze and I have one more transfer? Should I get Mbeumo in for Mitoma? No. I like Mbeumo a lot. I would make the transfer eventually, but not in Game Week 3. I actually think Mbeumo could blank in Game Week 3, but I'm looking to buy him in Game Week 4. As for Maddison and for Eze, I like that move. Just wait and see for more clarification in the press conferences on Thursday, Friday. Best 4-point family and goalkeeper, still Flecken for me. Where is Bernardo? He picked up an injury problem as well. Rashford and Joao Pedro out, Foden and Alvarez / Jackson in. Good transfers long term. I wouldn't sell Rashford this week. Hold or sell Salah. It all depends on what other moves you would make with the extra funds you gain from that move. But I would be more inclined to sell just because he's not justifying the price tag. Your thoughts on Diaz or Jota to cover Red's attack? Diaz is in better form. He's looking so impressive, but I do prefer Jota. I just think he's more of a fox in the box. He'll score more goals, and he's leading the line. The one caveat to that is that Diaz seems more nailed on. Do you think you should sell Salah? It's a really tricky one. I'm pretty much 50-50 on it, but if I had to lean one way, it would be to sell. What transfers? Well, long term, I would recommend Mbumo, Maddison, and I also like the look of Diaz and Foden at the moment, even Jota, but it's all dependent on your team. You know, I'm not sure what other moves you'd be looking to make. I don't know who you have already. I don't think Jackson's looking really bad. Maybe his finishing isn't great, but he's getting some decent shot volume. He's getting some good opportunities, especially in Gameweek 1. And I think the goals will come, especially in Gameweek 3 against Luton Town. Mitoma or Diaby? I think Mitoma's a better asset at the moment, but based on the fixtures, you know, they both turn. You know, Aston Villa don't have necessarily great fixtures coming up soon, but they're better than Brighton's. If I were to buy one now, it would be Diaby. It actually would. It's a tricky one, really tricky one. Looking to move on, Joao Pedro. Who do I buy? 1.5 million in the bank. I'd say Alvarez or Wissa. Who would I prefer long term? Probably Wissa. Stones to Gavardiol or Colwill? Gavardiol. Werner's better than Mudryk. It's obvious. You can see how Werner creates space. I actually think Werner was quite underrated in his first season. He played a good part in Chelsea winning the Champions League. He had a decent number of goals and assists. I just think he lacked confidence in front of goal. Mudryk isn't really offering anything at the moment. Jackson or Wissa or Isak? Wissa for me long term. That would be my answer. In terms of Gameweek 3, I think Jackson will score the highest amount of points based on the fixture, but Wissa for me seems like the best one. Shaw to Henry or Gavardiol? I would say I would keep Shaw this week. That's my opinion. But if you were to sell, it would be Henry. And as for bench Gabriel and Pedro to Jackson or Gabriel, yeah, I can't lie. That's just so many different circumstances and situations there. I think I would potentially bench Gabriel and Pedro. I think, yeah, Pedro to Jackson looks like the best move there. Best James replacement, says FK. Let me know which defenders you have. It's just difficult for me to say off the top of my head without knowing which players you have, but Chilwell immediately springs to mind. Gavardiol, Rico Henry look like really solid options. Saliba, I'm still liking the look of. So that's kind of where I would look. Yeah, I think so. I still like Chilwell a lot, despite the blank today. Salah to Diaby and fund another forward, upgrade other positions. I like Diaby, but I would rather go for Mbumo long term. Enciso or Wissa or Isak? Enciso is a midfielder, is worth mentioning. He did get a position change. But Wissa for me is the best of the three, long term. I already have Mbumo. Is Wissa still an option? Yes, it still is. Someone else earlier was talking about a triple up in Brentford. I'm not completely against that, even though my ideal kind of balance is a double up. If I have Diaby and don't have Mitoma, should I switch? No, I'd keep Diaby. Welcome, Raid. Great videos as always. How about West Ham assets? I mean, James Ward-Prowse really caught my eye. Paqueta, not so much. He's on penalties, but not really. Of course, there is a bit of a investigation going into him at the moment. And as a general FPL asset, I think James Ward-Prowse looks the most impressive. A girl has a bit of threat from set pieces. He's only 4.5 million, but really from West Ham, Areola's your backup 4 million goalkeeper. Is really the best of the lot. And yeah, I'd probably say James Ward-Prowse is looking really promising with the set pieces. Why is everyone rating Man United assets so highly? Not really. At the moment, people are, really looking to sell them, if anything. Maybe why did we start with, a triple up in Gameweek 1? That's a good question, but it's easy to say that now. I was a bit apprehensive about my double up offensively, but I went for it because I just thought of it as great fixtures in Gameweeks 1 and 3, where I thought United would do really well. And I also thought they could get at least a goal contribution against Tottenham. And for me, they were really underpriced, but as things stand, it's not looking too good. Do you think Wissa or Jackson in for Watkins in Game Week 3 or 4? I mean, Jackson looks the best one to bring in right now based on the Luton Town fixture, but if you're looking for someone medium to long-term, Milner, Wissa for me. Any players you're keeping an eye on that may move to other teams, maybe like Balogun? Yeah, definitely. Balogun's a great shout. Nuno Tavares could be decent in Aston Villa, although rotation with Dean could be very likely. But that's a good shout. Good question. There's probably a few names that is escaping me at the moment, but yeah, even Wirtz is linked to Man City at the moment from Bayer Leverkusen. Josop Eze for Mbuma, good long-term transfer. I like that. What transfers do I have? What transfers to do? I have Salah, only suggestion for downgrade. Pedro, Gabriel, Bruno, Shaw are who I'd be looking to move on. Something like Salah to, let's say, Mbeumo long term or Maddison, and then looking to upgrade Pedro to Alvarez, Jackson, or Watkins looks pretty sensible. And then after that, in Game Week 4, Bruno Fernandes, you can bring in another midfielder that I mentioned. I think that looks pretty solid there. Sell Rashford, I'm sure, for Luis Diaz and Gavardiol for Game Week 4. Yes, Game Week 4, I think that looks pretty solid. I wouldn't do that now for sure, but yeah, solid plan, Anthony. I do prefer a few other midfielders over Diaz still, but he is looking really impressive. I have Henry, Shaw, Stupinian, Botman, and Reece James with 0-point family in the bank. Keepers are Ramsdale and Areola. Need to get rid of James before price change. Yeah, if you can afford Chilwell still, I'd probably go there. Maybe there's a reason why they're underpriced. Exactly, really good point. I think they'll do well against Forest. I would back Rashford to score and maybe even to get a big return. But it's a big if at the moment. James Ward-Prowse will be better because West Ham got some great players with heading and volleys. Yeah, West Ham have a lot of, over-reliance, you could say, or emphasis on set pieces. Ward-Prowse is one of the best set piece takers in the world, so it's a match made in heaven at the moment. Is it worth taking a -4 to sell James, or is it worth saving him for Game Week 5 where he is hopefully back? The thing is with Reece James, he's just a constant injury doubt. Even if he comes back in Game Week 5, he could be injured fairly soon afterwards. I even said this before starting the season. I see him getting an injury soon. I hate to say it, but it's just what's happened a lot over the last few years. So I'd probably look to sell him. Even for a -4, him to Chilwell looks pretty good, to be honest. Gabriel to Gabriel for a -4, no. As good as Man City are defensively, Gabriel might not even start. It wouldn't surprise me if he got benched there. And Gabriel against Fulham scored last season in the home fixture. And in the other game, Arsenal kept the clean sheet in a 3-0 win. So I wouldn't do that. Wissa or Pedro, who will be first choice in Game Week 3? Wissa. Shaw and Pickford to Henry, Botman and Edison. Good transfers, to be fair, but Shaw, I think, will outscore Henry and Botman in Game Week 3. And Edison isn't the greatest in terms of saves and bonus points. Rashford or Richarlison? Oh, I'd rather sell Richarlison and keep Rashford, to be fair. Despite Rashford being more expensive and being very disappointing, Rashford's the better asset, and I think he'll outscore Richarlison in Game Week 3. Been a pretty poor Game Week for everyone, especially as most people are running Haaland, Rashford and Bruno. For the template, it's been a poor week, but some people are having 40, 50 scores. I even saw someone with 66 earlier. Maybe some of Mbeumo and Matoma. So there were some good scores in there, but it really just depends on the template. Thoughts on Shaw to Gusto, Pedro to Jackson, or do Fernandes to Sterling to fund Jackson? I'll be honest, if I were to make a move, it would be Shaw to Gusto, but I wouldn't recommend that this week. I like Jackson in Game Week 3, but Shaw's a really good option in defence in Game Week 3. You can always sell him in Game Week 4, and I'm just not so sure about downgrading a pretty decent defender with plenty of clean sheet potential to Gusto. I just don't like the look of that, to be honest. It's not bad on paper, let me be clear, and I would do Shaw to Gusto if you had to make one move, but I probably wouldn't do it this week. Anthony puts his team, Johnston, Shaw, Chilwell, Estupinian, Gabriel, Baldock, Bruno, Rashford and Mbeumo. What should I do for Game Week 3? I think Johnston is worth selling, in my opinion. Crystal Palace asset. I know it's a goalkeeper, but I'd probably sell him if you've got 2 free transfers. And then in Game Week 4, I would look to sell Bruno and maybe Shaw, potentially, or even both your Man United midfielders. Eduardo Wissa all day long. I don't think it's a competition. Watkins or Jackson? Watkins. Jackson has the better fixtures, and I think he will outscore Watkins in Game Week 3, but Watkins is the best long-term option. So yeah, I would go for Watkins. So we have been streaming for over an hour and a half, which is, quite surprising. These streams always tend to go so quickly, so I appreciate that. Like I said, we are very close towards 19,000 subscribers, around 80 or so away, and let's try to get this stream to over 100 plus likes. I think we can definitely do that, and I appreciate those of you who have tuned in today. If you haven't already, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, share this video around with those that love FPL. I'll try to get some more FPL content out very soon. UCL Fantasy is also live, so I'll try to get a first draft video out very soon. The Champions League draw is out on the 31st of August, I believe. So I might do a video before then, and then after the draw, I will make an updated draft video and then start getting out the content for UCL Fantasy, which tends to be very popular. Be sure to check out all the links in the description below for the Twitter, Instagram, which is DylanRCM, also the Patreon, channel memberships, the Discord server, the FPL League, and also Draft Town, which I'd highly recommend to all of you to check out. And they're actually looking to make some more upgrades this season, even after Game Week 1 has started. Konzo says, do you think I should wait one more week on keeping Joao Pedro? In terms of your moves, I probably would. Look, I think that is a decent move to do Pedro to Jackson. I have to admit, it is a really good upgrade, even in the long term, but it's just the other move that I'm a bit unsure about. I think Shaw will do well, get between 6 to 9 points against Forest, and that's why I'd lean towards no with your move. So keeping Joao Pedro for another week isn't too bad. If he gets the start, he's got a good chance of scoring or getting a return. Is Pedro a major get out or hold? Let's put it this way. He's a 5.6 million forward. He's on penalties when he starts, and he had a decent performance in Game Week 1. He should have scored another goal, and he'll still get plenty of minutes this season. So I don't think he's a must sell, but there are better forwards for sure. Yeah, Game Week 3 wildcard vid, that will be coming your way. I would expect that to be quite in demand, so yeah, don't worry about that. Interesting question. Do you think City's defense will be subbed in if they are benched? Depends on the nature of the game. If they're leading 1-0 like against Newcastle, I think there could be occasions where that happens. Sometimes Guardiola just doesn't make substitutions. That's just the way he goes about it. He just starts a team, they play the full 90, and then he rotates a lot in the weeks to come. Eze or Mbeumo? Mbeumo all day long for me. I like Eze a lot, and once the fixtures turn, I would be more keen on him, but Mbeumo's on penalties. I know Eze is as well, but for me, offensively, Brentford are just superior to Crystal Palace, and I would expect Mbeumo to get more returns. I have to say, though, I'm not being salty. I think the 2 penalties Brentford have got so far this season have been very soft. I agree, Lager. Best mids for Game Week 4? Game Week 4 is looking a bit further ahead, but if I had to give you kind of a quick rundown, best midfielders for Game Week 4, it would be Foden if he starts, big if, of course. Bit of a tricky one this week because a lot of the top teams have more difficult fixtures. Brighton as well, they've got Newcastle. But yeah, I'd say Saka is still a good option against Man United. I would probably go for Salah. Phil Foden. Yeah, I think I'd go for something like that. And if I had to complete the team, probably Maddison against Burnley away. Yeah, that would be my midfield 4. And to complete it, Mbeumo against Bournemouth. So yeah, that would be my midfield 5 off the top of my head. Of course, we'll talk about this in more detail. Man United will struggle this season if they don't get another midfielder. Apparently, they are targeting one. I also think they need another forward, another winger, probably another defender for squad depth. I still think they're 3 or 4 signings away, to be fair. Yes, Lager, because we are probably wrapping up, I think. I would probably say so. We'll go back to my team. But yeah, we are probably going to wrap up very, very soon. Who's more nailed during Europe, Mitoma or March? I think Mitoma. This was a big issue last season towards the end. March was getting benched a lot after the FA Cup semi-final, whilst Mitoma started pretty much every game. I have both Gvardiol and Shaw. Who should I play? Sure. I think they have a better chance than Arsenal to keep a clean sheet in Game Week 3. Or should I buy Gvardiol? Maybe wait another week, but yeah, it's not a bad shout. Foden must start. Yeah, I mean, with De Bruyne out, Bernardo's a doubt as well. I mean, I say De Bruyne's a doubt. He's out for multiple months at the moment. That is a good shout, but you just never know with Foden. Hi, keep Bruno or Rashford? If I were to keep one, it would be Rashford, simply because against Nottingham Forest, he got 2 goals and 3 assists last season in 2 games, whilst Bruno Fernandes only got 1 goal in 4 appearances. Chelsea have very good fixtures. Well, Jackson in for Mitoma would involve another transfer because Mitoma's a midfielder, Jackson's a forward, And I'm not so sure if I'd sell Matoma this week, to be quite frank. I don't think I would. If anything, wait until Game Week 4. Chelsea have very good fixtures, but Jackson hasn't scored a goal yet, and Chelsea still seem like they lack something in front of goal. I have Wiss and Joao Pedro. You think it could be worth freeing up funds and selling Pedro for Asula? Yeah, I think it could be worth it, but it just depends what your other move would be once you free up the funds. So let me know what that would be. What you're doing with United assets, holding for now, and in Game Week 4, probably selling Bruno Fernandes, and Mbeumo will probably come straight in. Should I sell Rashford for Matoma in Game Week 4? Not in Game Week 4 because Matoma has Newcastle at home. I'd rather go to Mbeumo there directly. Yeah, Foden's a good differential, of course, and same with Diaz at the moment, and Jota. Bench Shaw, Gabriel, Bruno, Rashford for Game Week 3. Don't bench a Man United player against Nottingham Forest at home. I'd rather bench Gabriel there. I'm not going to buy Foden again. Yeah, I'm completely jinxed with him. I think he did quite well for me in UCL Fantasy, but in FPL, no. Got to keep Bruno and Rashford for Game Week 3. If not any returns, then we sure need to consider getting rid of both of them. Yeah, I completely agree with that analysis. Best City defender. Look, my gut feeling is Gvardiol. Akanji seems fairly nailed on, but the way I see it, Ruben Dias, Gvardiol, and Akanji in that order are the most nailed on. And I'd probably go for Gvardiol because he's 5 million and should start most games as their big signing. I own Diaby, frustrated today. Yeah, but he did really well. Really good performance, of course. That's not a big consolation, but at least you made a good decision in buying him. Also, Gusto, he's not going to reach the same heights as Reece James, but as a 4 million defender, let's actually put into context, he was 5th in terms of bonus points system, despite conceding 3 times. So that's really impressive from Gusto. Should I take a hit to get Chilwell into my team? Depends who you sell, but I'd lean towards yes. I like Chilwell still. He is an injury-prone player, and Chelsea aren't great, but still looks pretty good. Got 74 points now, second in your league. Really good stuff there, Dexter. Do you think Maddison plays next game week? I think so, but just wait and see first. Don't buy him in just yet, just in case. Should I take a hit to bring in Mbeumo and Wissa? Depends who you sell, but I'd probably say no. I think Crystal Palace, Brentford could be quite low scoring. No, I don't think so. Kulusevski had a really good, when he joined Spurs, he had a really good start to his Premier League career, but I don't think so. Keep or sell Watkins? Keep. I started with him, Diaby, exactly, and he scored against Newcastle, which is a really good return. Man United risk after Wolves at home performance? Well, yeah. I think they played well in the first half against Spurs, but their second half performance was awful. Is it worth selling Rashford and Fernandes for Matoma and Salah? No. Especially this week. Let's put into context. Salah plays Newcastle this week. Matoma plays Newcastle next week. Brighton have poor fixtures until game week 8 or 9. I think they're bottom of the fixture ticker over the next 5 or 6 game weeks. Rashford and Fernandes play Nottingham Forest at home. So I would recommend keeping them both and then selling either one in Game Week 4, most likely Fernandes, and that's where you can go to Mbeumo, for example. I'm ranked 700. Is it worth taking a hit for Mbeumo or Chilwell? I wouldn't take a hit for Mbeumo this week. I'd actually be more open to taking a hit for Chilwell, despite him being a defender. I think Chelsea could keep a clean sheet and Chilwell could get an attack in return. So a monster haul against Luton Town is possible. And as for Mbeumo, great long-term move. The hit will pay off eventually, but I'd probably save that move for Game Week 4 instead. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. On the way out, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. If you've got any other questions, leave them in the comment section down below. I'll be answering them. There's also the Discord server, my Twitter and Instagram. It's been a blast here over the past 1 hour and 40 minutes. I'll be back with more FPL content, and UCL fantasy videos and streams will be on the way as well. So take care, enjoy the football. Let's see what happens tomorrow in that London derby between Crystal Palace and Arsenal, and hopefully it's a great game. I'll see you very soon.